just because the mainstream media decide that Myanmar is no longer of any interest, it is an interest to all of us. We have to keep up that pressure and keep up those demands. When we founded the Stop the War Coalition 20 years ago, I never thought 20 years on we'd still be meeting and still be campaigning against injustice and wars. I did not believe it would go on so long. But I have to pay huge tribute to those that founded the Stop the War Coalition. To Salma, to Chris, to Lindsay, to John, to Tarek, to Andrew Murray and so many others that were there from the very beginning in 2001 and are still there doing it today. And on September the 18th, the Stop the War Coalition will be holding a big rally in central London in order to commemorate 20 years on, but redouble our efforts to stop the wars of tomorrow. We were not founded, as some people think, to oppose the war in Iraq. We were founded to oppose the bombing of Afghanistan after the terrible events of 9/11. I remember like it was yesterday, at that rally, Bruce Kent, who spoke there, said, "It's very easy to unleash the dogs of war. It's very hard to get them back in the kennels afterwards." That bombing went ahead, that occupation went ahead, and sadly, a very small number of us in Parliament voted against that war in 2001. Then talk began about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, but during the same time, the war got worse in Afghanistan, but got less reporting, and now we have a US government calling for a future of Afghanistan that is a coalition between the existing government and the Taliban. You couldn't make it up. Sadly, tens of thousands have died, including 450 British soldiers in that interim period. Billions has been spent, poverty has increased, refugee flows have increased, and there's no end in sight to the insecurity, the poverty and the conflict for the people of Afghanistan. So I say to any putative or future politician, when you sit on the green benches in Parliament and somebody urges you to go to war, it's not their children they're sending to war. It's not their children that are going to be bombed. It is somebody else's and somebody else's. It's easy to wrap yourself in the flag in that moment of glory. But think of the consequences 10, 20 and 30 years on, when the poverty and the refugees still continue. That is the price of war. As I was saying,
It's a racket.
during that period, we then had talk of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Now, just a word of health warning here. In the 1990s, I tabled motions in Parliament to end the arms trade with Iraq, to stop arming Saddam Hussein and Iraq. And I was told by various people, "Steady on, you're upsetting the British arms trade. Can you kindly shut up about this? Iraq is a very important market for us." I didn't shut up, I carried on doing that. And as the claims of weapons of mass destruction grew ever more bizarre, we campaigned against that war. We campaigned as strongly as we could against that war. More than 1 million, maybe 2 million people were in London that day on September the 15th, 2003. And sadly, I can remember my own speech like it was yesterday. I said, "The war of today will beget the wars of tomorrow, the refugee flows of tomorrow, the terrorism of tomorrow, the poverty of tomorrow." And what has happened in refugee camps all over the region, all over the Middle East, with that rush to war at that time. And so, think very carefully about the consequences of wars and going to war. We went on, we bombed Libya, We bombed Libya and killed a very large number of people. And what did we create? A functioning democracy or a civil war in that country. We bombed in Syria, and I'm not here to defend any particular side in Syria. Instead of seeking a way forward that speaks for all of the people of Syria, we took part in bombardment instead. There has to be a different and a better way of resolving conflicts in the world than the wealthiest and most powerful in the world buying arms from the biggest and most powerful countries in the world in order always to bomb the poorest and most desperate people who years later are trying to eke out existence in refugee camps all over the world. Surely to goodness, we need a foreign policy that doesn't talk in grandiose terms about world leadership, about aircraft carriers going around the world, about a Cold War with China or a Cold War with Russia, or a Cold War or a hot war with anybody else. Real security isn't the ability to kill others. Real security is the ability to know you've got food, you've got schools, you've got hospitals, you've got clean air, you've got clean water, and you've got a secure future for your children in a society where you're free to speak. That is what real security is about. And before anybody calls me unpatriotic for this, I would simply say my view on patriotism is that yes, I'm very patriotic for all of the people of this country. That's why I want them to have a free and fully functioning health service, a free and fully functioning education service, an end to the necessity of food banks, an end to rough sleeping, an end to poverty. These are surely the issues of social justice that we have to put forward. And so, we campaign. The organisation that I founded after I stepped down from being leader of the Labour Party, the Project for Justice and Peace, is organising on all these issues. Organising on all these issues to mobilise people and to give people voice. And tomorrow afternoon, we're holding a seminar, big function, online, Facebook, etc., etc. You can easily access it on the arms trade and the effects of the arms trade and the corruption that the arms trade brings in. And I say that because if we don't challenge the pressure of arms manufacturers and arms traders, then we will get ourselves involved in more wars and more conflict. And so we have to defend, support and protect the jobs of those that work in all industries, while we as a society move into something more sustainable, a cleaner, greener, more peaceful future. It is all about public investment and public intervention. It's not all about handing out billions of pounds to Serco and calling that the solution to the COVID crisis. It is about investment in the needs of our people. Points I want to conclude on.
I can't keep the camera still, my hands keep shaking.
Our Stop the War movement was founded to unite people against wars. We united millions on that day 18 years ago. We can unite people still on all these issues. Look at those that turned out in support of peace in the Middle East and of Palestine. But we unite people by not allowing ourselves to be divided. The right and the racists in our society will always seek to divide us. Look at the gruesome history of mid-20th century Europe. The way a small, ultra-right, crazy, apparently insignificant organisation called the Nazi Party in Germany was founded and started to grow on the basis of attacking the Jewish community. They promoted and fed on anti-Semitism. That ended up with the Holocaust and the gas chambers and the genocide against the Jewish people. That is where racism leads you to. And so, in understanding our history, we empower ourselves to oppose racism. Black Lives Matter, founded in 2013, was the black community in the USA saying, we've had enough. We've had enough of police brutality, a failure to recognise our history or our victimhood or our discrimination, a failure to teach the real history of the slave trade and the brutality and horror that it was. And so when George Floyd was killed, there was renewed impetus for Black Lives Matter, a need to study our history afresh and our children to understand where the end of the slave trade came from. Was it William Wilberforce and his loquacious speeches in Parliament? Yes, at one level, he got the bill through. It ended the slave trade and ultimately ended slavery in legal form. But in reality, the slave trade was ended by the uprisings of slaves in Jamaica, in Grenada, in the USA, and so many other places. All the government that rose up against it and ended that. And so, the racism that we face today is of the same order. Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-black racism, abuse of three brilliant young footballers because they didn't quite succeed in winning a trophy. So stand with them, stand with all those that are victims, and let's build that society that recognises diversity as a strength, that recognises a multi-faith, multilingual, multicultural society isn't a problem, it's something to be very proud of. Our health service, our education, our science, our learning, our transport, our standards of living come in part from what's been done in this country by migrants and refugees. And on Monday and Tuesday, Parliament will be debating the Nationality and Borders Bill. That Nationality and Borders Bill seeks to criminalise people who help others. I'll tell you for why. Last Sunday, a lifeboat towed a dinghy into a harbour in North Kent. It saved the lives of 20 desperate people, as Imran pointed out, in the Channel. They didn't choose to try and cross the English Channel in a leaky dinghy without any proper motor or anything else. They didn't choose to have to march, walk or hide their way across Europe. They wanted a place of safety for them and their children. Were they exploited on the way by people traffickers and people smugglers? No doubt they were. And that crew of the lifeboat that saved them and brought them ashore, under the legislation planned and under the legislation in operation in some European countries, that lifeboat crew would be criminalised for saving life at sea. Have we so lost our humanity that we cannot see a human being trying to survive and make their way in this difficult and complicated world through anything
Sounds like you'll need to get on TikTok. I think so.
Hostile right-wing media that demonises all those that are trying to survive in this world.
Go for it.
So let's be strong. Strong here in Bradford and elsewhere. The Stop the War Coalition was founded to unite people. When we come together, we debate, we discuss, but above all, we unite to march together for a world of peace, a world of justice, and a world of unity. Thank you, Bradford. Thank you, John.